seat begins next Friday at 9.
A deadly plot on a global scale.
I'm talking about a dead British spy who got taken out by professionals.
A conspiracy out of control.
Whatever they're up to must be very big and very dangerous.
One man up against a powerful enemy.
3 people are dead over this. They're not going to let me walk away.
No one gets in and no one gets out.
They control his mind, but not his soul. A spy thriller with a chilling twist. Tagget, tonight at 10:30 LWT.
And next tonight on LWT, stay with us for News at 10 with Dermot Murnaghan.
With tomorrow's Daily Mail, you can have up to 6 items dry cleaned at Sketchley for half price, saving over £25. Get your first token in tomorrow's Daily Mail.
This wee laddie's got some growing to do, but I know he'll end up tall and true, because he's getting all the goodness of the pure whole wheat that goes into his favourite breakfast, shredded wheat. So he'll end up like his granddad, solid on his feet.
Shredded wheat is made only from 100% pure whole wheat, simply shredded and baked till it's crisp, golden,
and just the way we like it.
Shredded wheat in bite size. There's only wheat in shredded wheat.
Here, in one of the world's most advanced manufacturing environments, Intel technicians are making Pentium processors. Nearby, other Intel technicians are adding something new. We call it MMX technology. You'll call it fun.
Los Angeles. Why on earth would anyone want to fly all the way there in a business class seat, when for the same money they can fly there in a first class seat? Can't all be visiting their analysts, can they?
Coming soon to LWT.
I've always been addicted to speed. Formula One doesn't stop for anything. It carries on, and you have to keep proving yourself every single race. It's pressing on from start to finish, never letting up until the checker flag, checker flag. Formula One is the pinnacle.
For the best days of the week, this is LWT.
From ITN News at 10 with Dermot Murnaghan.
The Lawrence killing, legal row over papers allegations. Majors rallying cry in Wales, don't break up Britain. Shuttle spacewalkers complete Hubble Double. And a Valentine's Day surprise for the princess. Good evening. The newspaper which accused 5 white men of the racial murder of a black teenager tonight said it would continue its campaign. The Daily Mail published the names and photographs of the 5 men today and challenged them to sue. The lawyer of one of the men called it outrageous and said they're considering their next move. Leading lawyers criticised the Mail and said it shouldn't act as judge and jury. ITN's Howell Jones reports.
Stephen Lawrence's family simply want one question settled in a court of law. Who killed the teenager in a racist attack? Today, they read the Daily Mail's allegations with some satisfaction. The Mail's front-page splash names 5 unconvicted men, publishing their pictures and branding them as murderers. In an editorial, the paper says, when the judicial system has failed so lamentably to deal with the killers of Stephen Lawrence, extraordinary measures are demanded. It's nearly 4 years since Stephen Lawrence bled to death after an attack at this bus stop in southeast London. Stephen was 18. His family took out a private prosecution against 5 young men, but no one was convicted. 3 of the 5 were formally acquitted of his murder. Cases against the other 2 were discharged by magistrates. The Daily Mail insists the men are murderers and says they can sue the paper for libel if they want to prove their innocence. So will the Mail bring matters to a head by paying the men's legal costs?
I think that it would be wrong of us to try to pay their costs and to open us to the possible charge that we were orchestrating the whole case. They must bring their own case.
The Daily Mail has really thrown down the gauntlet with this story, and tonight a solicitor acting for one of the 5 men named says his client is considering legal action for libel.
He is outraged. That's what I anticipated his reaction to be, and that's confirmed.
Senior lawyers have also criticised the Mail's coverage.
The Mail have gone a step too far in their headline, murderers, and the implication is that papers can become judge and jury, and that's a very dangerous step to take.
Tonight, the Mail's deputy editor showed me the paper's next story on the men they call Stephen Lawrence's killers. Tomorrow's front page is just as bold as today's, just as likely to run the risk of libel. Howell Jones, News at 10, Central London.
The Prime Minister launched a strong attack on Labour's plans for devolving power to Scotland and Wales today. He said a Labour government would take a hammer and chisel to the Constitution, which he said had served Britain well for centuries. Tony Blair said it was absurd to suggest that the Constitution should never be changed. Here's our political correspondent, Hugh Pym.
In the devolution debate, the week started badly for the Tories. John Major was determined to end it back on the offensive. There'd been clear tensions between ministers over how to tackle Labour's plans for Scottish and Welsh assemblies. But Mr Major told Welsh Conservatives the challenge was clear.
In a phrase he may live to regret, the Labour leader once referred to 1,000 days of Labour government to prepare for 1,000 years of British history. 1,000 years of Labour government could ditch 1,000 years of British history. It's a poor bargain. Better to keep the history and ditch the Labour Party.
But with Land of Hope and Glory echoing as usual around the conference hall, John Major was accused of getting his history wrong. The Welsh nationalists plied Cymru, questioning the talk of 1,000 years of British history. Wales didn't formally link with England till 1536, they said. It was a desperate attempt by a desperate Prime Minister to cling to the past, said the Liberal Democrats. As for Tony Blair, he was launching a poster stressing Labour's commitment not to raise income tax. He defended Labour's plans for constitutional change.
The idea that the British Constitution should never change and evolve and develop is completely absurd. I mean, we've developed a lot over the past 100 years, and what we're saying is that politics has lost touch with people. We need power brought out of Whitehall and Westminster.
This conference was brought forward in case Mr Major wanted to use it as a launch pad for the general election campaign. That hasn't happened, but Mr Major has used the opportunity to put constitutional issues at the heart of the campaign agenda, and he'll return to the theme in a big set-piece Commons debate on devolution next Thursday. Before that, of course, he must face up to Labour's challenge over BSE and a close-run vote over that on Monday. Hugh Pym, News at 10, at the Welsh Conservative Conference.
Police tonight charged a woman with possession of an imitation firearm after people were threatened at the High Court in London for the second day running. A woman burst into Court 7 yesterday brandishing a plastic gun, but evaded a massive police hunt. She was arrested when she went back to the court today, again armed with a fake gun. The banking giant Lloyds TSB announced profits of more than £2.5 billion today. The profits for the first full year since the two banks merged work out at £80 a second. But the Consumers Association claimed the bank wouldn't use the money to improve its service to customers. John Draper reports.
At the sign of the Black Horse today, they were counting their own money as well as the customers. Lloyd's profits are up more than 50%. The bank made £2.5 billion last year, almost 5,000 every minute. But critics say Lloyds are feathering their own nest at the expense of the public.
We looked at the accounts offered by Lloyds and all the other big banks. We then costed these up, and we found that there were some quite staggering differences between the best and the worst accounts. Lloyds, along with NatWest, came out worse. And we found that if you're with one of these banks, you may be paying perhaps £1,000 a year over the odds.
No one from the bank was available to be interviewed this evening, but a spokeswoman said that Lloyds had 15 million customers who received free banking. She said profits came partly from charges for services which people opted to buy from the bank. The fact that it was one of the most successful in the country was a proof that it gave value for money. So are Lloyds squeezing customers or just running an efficient company? Certainly new technology has cut costs, albeit at the expense of jobs. But the merger of Lloyds with the TSB and the group's acquisition of the Cheltenham and Gloucester has given them a much bigger slice of the lucrative mortgage trade.
Lloyds with Cheltenham and Gloucester is a very efficient producer of mortgages. They have been very aggressive in pricing mortgages. It's shown in growth of their mortgage book that was twice the industry average in 1996.
Lloyds say the profits will be ploughed into better services for customers, though the shareholders will get their cut. Other banks are also due to report large profits in the coming weeks. John Draper, News at 10.
The town, which could become the flashpoint for renewed fighting in Bosnia, will stay under international supervision for another year, officials announced today. Muslims and Croats want Brcko, which was seized by the Serbs during the war, handed back to their control. But international mediators say the situation there is too volatile for them to make a final decision. Brcko straddles a narrow strip of land connecting the areas controlled by the Serbs. But the Muslim Croat Federation wants it back because of its access to Western Europe. ITN's Colin Baker reports from Brcko.
The politicians' failure to grasp the nettle placed NATO forces on a high state of alert. If reconciliation is not to be the answer, then once again in Bosnia, it's the peacekeeping soldier who must guard against the alternative. Today around Brcko with increased patrols and more searching and checkpoints. Wary of the former warring factions trying to smuggle outlawed weapons into the region, American troops, supported by battle tanks, stopped and searched all vehicles. Black Hawk helicopters watch for any movement, threatening to further destabilize this ultra-sensitive area. In this Muslim village, less than 5 miles from Bosnian Serb-held Brcko, taxi drivers blockaded the road from the Americans' main camp, while thousands more Muslims and Croats gathered nearby. Many of these people are refugees and had been expecting to cross into Brcko this weekend to repossess the homes they were driven from 5.5 years ago. Now they're being asked to wait another year. In 1992, after heavy fighting, the Bosnian Serbs took control of Brcko, a town which straddles a narrow corridor linking Serb territory to the east and the west. Now this old battleground is what thousands of Muslim refugees wish to come back to, properties mostly unrecognizable as homes, and they also want control of the town. On the face of it, this blitzed war zone hardly seems worth fighting for, and yet possession of this no man's land with its debris of battle, its memories of thousands of lives lost, now threatens even more conflict in Bosnia. The politicians may have postponed the final decision on Brcko, but in Bosnia, time has rarely been a healer. Colin Baker, News at 10, Brcko.
2 astronauts spent nearly 7 hours spacewalking today to upgrade the Hubble telescope. They fixed 2 new instruments, which will give much better pictures of outer space. 3 more walks from the Shuttle Discovery, 360 miles above the Earth, are planned. From the United States, here's our correspondent, James Mates.
It is a telescope that has already allowed mankind to look deeper into the universe than ever before. Now, Hubble is better still. 2 astronauts from the Shuttle Discovery worked for more than 6.5 hours, orbiting the Earth at more than 17,000 miles an hour to fit 2 powerful new instruments. These will allow astronomers on Earth to look even further into space, to watch the birth of new stars, and to study the most intriguing phenomenon of all, black holes.
It's like getting for the first time a 4-wheel all-terrain vehicle where you can get off the interstates, really explore things that nobody's ever seen before, and these instruments are more efficient, so it's like having 30 times the gas efficiency, so you don't have to stop for gas in the middle of nowhere.
After early teething troubles, scientists have been amazed at the quality of pictures being sent back from Hubble, images of far-off galaxies, impossible to get from Earth. As one NASA official put it, it's almost impossible to believe that our view of space will soon be better still. For astronauts Mark Lee and Steve Smith, today was just one of 4 days they'll spend walking in space as they give the telescope a thorough overhaul and tune-up. It is costing $350 million, but it'll extend Hubble's working life long into next century. James Mates, News at 10 in the United States.
Coming next on News at 10, the vital goals, Bruce Grobbelaar's evidence at the match-rigging trial. Tension grows as more riots erupt in Albania. from the children, a Valentine for the princess. And tomorrow's rugby, what are England's chances against Ireland?
In '93 they stuffed us, so, you know, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
There aren't many certainties in life. Who would have predicted the new shape me? But one thing you can be certain of is you don't have to pay tax on your investments. I made sure of that when I created the PEP.
If you'd invested in an M&G PEP 5 years ago, you'd have made an average